Right, we are live. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the Kiwi Lads channel. We are on the eve of another matchup between New Zealand and South Africa, and for this preview, we'll be looking through at the sides, a few interesting stats to do with this match, and also just the build-up in general, what should be a very exciting test match. Looking through, first of all, at this All Black side. They have made a few changes compared to what we saw in the last game. In that front row, we see two differences compared to test match number one. Ethan Agroot, he keeps his spot as the one. Number two, Samisoni Tolkiaho, he comes in for the injured Cody Taylor. Well, injured with a head knock, I guess you should say. In that regard, Tyrell Lomax, he will get his first start since his injury. Made his way off the bench last week. Now moves into the starting side in the locking duo. Scott Barrett at number 4. That man's been a tackling machine throughout this Rugby Championship. In fact, is sitting 4th overall for tackles made. Tupavai at 5, one of the busiest players out there on the park for last week's Eden Park Test. Simon Parker, he was the busiest when it came to tackles made, 15 in total for that man. Adi Savia sticks at number 7 with some brilliant turnover ability from that man in front of the ex-home crowd in this regard, so I'm sure he'll want to put on a big performance here. Wallace Satiti, he had the most carries out of any All Black, so that loose forward trio really being busy throughout the overall contest. We have got Noah Hotham back as that number 9 for the New Zealanders, chucking him in the deep end after coming back from injury maybe 2 or 3 weeks early. It's a risk. Definitely after the way that Finlay Christie played. He actually had a pretty solid game at Eden Park, but they have decided to switch it back to Hotham with Beauden Barrett keeping his spot as the number 10. Geordie Barrett and Billy Proctor make up the midfield. There is a debutant in the number 11 jersey. Some people will know him from the All Black 7 side. He is an absolutely phenomenal player. He's got power, he's got pace. He was a standout for the Chiefs, and now he gets himself his international debut. Will Jordan moves to the right wing after the little bit of a switch. Amoni Narawa going down with the injury, so it does mean we get to see that reshuffle, and Damian McKenzie gets himself the start at 15, which is pretty close to what he did last week, seeing as he made his way off the bench for Narawa after only about 2 or 3 minutes. But that is the All Blacks starting side. They did announce their team on Thursday, whereas for the Springboks team, it was an early announcement. Monday, New Zealand time, and it was Monday in South Africa as well, but not many changes across the forward pack compared to maybe what we were expecting to see. There was always going to be a Jasper Wiese return in that number 8 jersey this week. The front row stays the same. Oxenshire, Malcolm Marks, and Thomas Tatoy. As the number 3, Ludiacha partners with Ruan Nokia in the locking duo, so no Eben Etzebeth for this game. Instead, Diacha gets himself the start rather than off the bench. Seo Kolisi moves into that number 6 jersey. Now, he did play 8 last week. Since Jasper Wiese's suspension, we've also seen Cobus Wiese get that chance in the 8 jersey. Peter Steph Toy at number 7, and then, of course, like I've mentioned, Jasper Wiese there as the number 8. He was one of the better players for South Africa up against New Zealand last year. So I feel like he'll come into this game with a lot of aggression, a lot of passion, and he'll try and get his side on the front foot. Early on in the backline, it is Cobus Reinach alongside Sasha Feinberg, Ungume Zulu. Those were 2 men who changed the game for South Africa in the second half, both bringing that real impact. And obviously, Rassie has realised maybe they'll go all right in the starting lineup here. New change in the number 12 jersey. It will be Damian Valimza. Now, he has played 12 for the Stormers, but at international level, I believe this is a little bit of a rarity for that man. He was struggling to get minutes at fullback. For this game, we see Apalele Fasi in that 15 jersey. Kanan Moody, he slots in as the number 13. He can be extremely dangerous there. They've got Andre Esterhuizen for a bit of impact off the bench, so a nice combination in that regard. Ethan Hooker for his starting debut as the number 11. Cheslin Colby out on the right wing. So here's the lone back who keeps his spot in the starting lineup, and then Apalele Fasi at number 15 rather than Willie LaRue. But looking through at the chat, we have got Wahugo, the All Blacks from Tyrone. We've got Bumfa from Novmum, who of course is very excited about seeing Leroy Carter get himself the chance. When is the game? Says Xander. The game is kicking off at 7:05 p.m. New Zealand time tomorrow night. So just like last week, we're doing a little bit of a live preview the night before. Currently, there is a match of the Bunnings NPC going on between North Harbour and also Waikato. It is quite close. Second half just now kicking off. Mark Talia, he has had an absolute field day out there on the park. And yeah, at the moment, very close. When it comes to the scoreline, we have got there Huhei Razor Ray, says Tanner. Okay, that's like a really long chant. We won't quite go through all of those. We have got there Tanner, yeah, nah, this is the ABs. says the AI underdog pick and Aussie versus Los Pumas will be somewhere over 4 p.m. Yeah, it's an intriguing one because last week we did see them say it was going to be a 4:30 p.m. kickoff, but it actually became 4:50. So I don't know whether or not to expect a 4 p.m. from the Aussies or whether it's actually going to be the case of a maybe 4:20-ish kind of kickoff time. But either way, we will be starting early. We haven't got a Pacific Nations Cup game beforehand. So from there, I feel like it should be all right. And there won't be too many overlaps. We have got there 7:05 p.m. says Tano2. And tomorrow says Novmum when it has taken place. Be honest, do you think Leroy Carter does deserve a call-up? If no, who would you have put in his spot? Says Kiwi Rob, always starting with the negativity, Rob. Asking whether or not he's good enough. But I think he is. I think from that Super Rugby season that we saw from Leroy Carter, it was either him or Caleb Tangitau out of those 7 guys who were going to get the call-up. Now, Tangitau ended up with the unfortunate early injury. Someone else from that 7 setups who's been tearing it up in the Bunnings NPC is Fihi Finiha Norfo. And I would not be one bit surprised if we see that man in an All Blacks kit within the next couple of years. But, Carter, it offers you something different from Ioane out on that left wing side. And I also do want to mention that in this scenario, Caleb Clark was probably the guy that a lot of people expected to see in that number 11 jersey. But Clark is not there. He also isn't playing Bunnings NPC rugby. We did see Sevu Reece get himself the chance for Southland, or in fact he will be having that chance very soon. But yeah, if it wasn't going to be Leroy Carter, it was going to be Caleb Clark. If it wasn't going to be Caleb Clark, it was going to be Leroy Carter out on that left wing. We have got there initially thought, says Blake there, I think the All Blacks still for the win, but might be a lot closer than I thought initially, if not a close loss. Says Blake, yeah, it seems to be, there's still that general consensus of a close game here between the two sides. Of the last 5 times that they've played, we've seen close games 4 times that the score has been separated by 7 or less. In fact, that last game just last week at Eden Park was one of the bigger kind of spreads that we have seen. In that regard, all I want to know is what's the chances of Jasper getting another card? I would like to think he would hone in the discipline for a game like this, but at the same time, it's Jasper Vesa. That man doesn't seem to know how to go at anything less than 150. So we're probably going to see him really toe that line. And, so far New Zealand, their discipline throughout that last game, giving away the 10 penalties but not getting a yellow card, that's still one of their better performances discipline-wise that we've seen in this Rugby Championship, because the times before that we've seen 5 yellow cards from just the 2 games. So certainly, North Harbour just scored. They will take the lead up against Waikato by the looks of it. That's going to be a close game. We'll have to keep an eye on that while we are doing this preview as well. Let's go to the All Blacks. Says Purple there, and RP Charlie Kirk says Choke the Woke. We have got Tupavai and Tamaiti Williams to annoy Jasper Vesa and get another red card again. The thing is, Jasper Vesa, it does not take much. Just ask Danielo Fischetti how easy it is to get under Jasper Vesa's skin. And unfortunately, it's a bit similar to what we've seen for Evan Roos in recent times, how all you got to do is poke the bear, theoretically, and then the bear normally gets angry. So Jasper Vesa, he will know that the All Blacks will be trying to poke fun at him a little bit and try and just really fire Jasper Vesa up. We have got there, Clark's been so quiet, tries drought, says Shane, whereas in NPC, you chuck him in 2 weeks in a row, he got himself a try. So, I don't think that if you put Caleb Clark at international level, it will take too long at all for him to score a try. I honestly don't. And, yes, there were some factors in Super Rugby that you could put down to Clark, but the way that the Blues played in general just did not favour that left wing side. And if you want to be really critical, there was an outside centre who had no try assists throughout the season who would normally feed into a winger. Mason Tupai, bit of a bloody nose at the moment for Waikato, but they are down by 4 points with 35 minutes remaining in that matchup. Do you think Leroy Carter will trouble the backline of South Africa, considering Leroy Carter's 7's experience and this start in NPC and Super Rugby? I think that Leroy Carter's got a certain set of skills, not like an assassin, but more so like a type of player who can just pierce a gap. You watch his 7's highlights, and he is just absolutely phenomenal in the way that he's able to find gaps, use that quick step. But the question is, will South Africa allow that much space for him out on that wing. He is up against Cheslin Kolbe in the head-to-head bout. So, maybe if he had Ethan Hooker in front of him, it would be slightly easier, seeing as he's a young player just like Leroy Carter. But Cheslin Kolbe's been around for a very long time. He's seen a lot of guys. He's even scored tries up against New Zealand and Wellington, and he's helped them win games. Him and Malcolm Marks both scoring in the last victory at Sky Stadium. We have got there, I wish Love is starting. Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because the option could have been to keep Damian McKenzie off the bench and then go into the chance of maybe starting Ruben Love, bring McKenzie on a bit later on in the game. FYI, Super Rugby Australia is live. Round 1 between the Western Force and the Waratahs. It is indeed. I'm not actually sure if we're going to cover that competition on the channel. It just seems like they've tried to throw it in at a random time, but I understand why. They want to get some Aussie rugby in while the under-19s, under-16s and whatnot are also playing. And I guess it just keeps everyone fresh for those November internationals as well. Is Leroy Carter faster than Kolbe? I'd assume so since Kolbe is in his 30s. It'd be a good foot race, I think, and it's actually one that I hope we get to see, like a breakaway run from Leroy Carter. But Kolbe's, like I said, he's a veteran. He knows a thing or two about a thing or two, and he will know how to deal with that pace, whether it's cutting it off early. Kolbe is also a 7 specialist. So he has Safrakiwi in there a little bit. Oh, that's a little bit of a combo name, is it? Possibly a, what's the saying? An egg in each basket? That's not the saying, is it? But something like that. The thing on each side, a foot in each door. There's a saying to do with being like impartial. Maybe it is yourself. Yes, but it's like a baby rhino with some IQ. Says Jake Toa there, and Boomfast smoked Kolbe cheese. Says Jake Toa, and Battle of the Bays tomorrow, Arvo. Says Kiwi Rob there as well. But we will quickly look through at the benches of these two sides, ladies and gentlemen. For New Zealand, they have got Brodie McAllister coming in. That is, of course, due to that head knocker Cody Taylor. Tamati Williams and Fletcher Null reunited for this matchup off the bench. Null was starting in Test match number 1 with Williams off the bench with Lomax. Whereas in this case, an All Crusaders front row making their way onto the field. Fabian Holland as the number 19 with Duplessis Karefi slotting in, as the number 20. Some thought we might have seen Peter Larkai get half a chance here. But Karefi, I'm just curious to know how many minutes they're going to give him and what they're going to do to that loose forward trio, because I don't see them taking Savia off. So either way, you need either Tupovai to go, well, I guess if he goes to 6, then that's already covered. Really, it's dependent on whether Wallace Satiti goes off the field, or else Karefi will probably get like 5 minutes at the end of the game again. Finlay Christie as the number 21, so no Kyle Preston. His All Blacks dash is done just for now, but hopefully we'll get some more minutes in the near future. Quinn Tupaia, number 22, did score himself a try last week up against the Box, and then Ruben Love gets a much-needed game opportunity as the number 23. For South Africa, they have got back to a specialist hooker in Manus van der Merwe. Jan Hendrik Wessels and Wilco Low will be the other 2 front row replacements, so the Bulls duo, who are very capable of being able to push over in a scrum. That is one aspect of the first match that I think some New Zealanders slightly concerned about. Argus Neyman, he is certainly a player to be concerned about too. Kwaka Smith the same. Grant Williams, Mani Libok, so no Andre Pollard for this game, and then Andre Esterhuizen back in as that number 23. But the way that the table sits at the moment, New Zealand sitting top of the bunch with the 10 points. South Africa sitting on the 9. Australia sitting on the 9. South Africa and Argentina both have themselves 5 points, but neither team is out of this competition at all. I've heard some people saying already that now that South Africa have dropped that Eden Park test, it means that there is no chance of the Rugby Championship. And that is a rumour as to why Rassie went with this different team. But they win this game, they're right up there. They're either second or they are first, and they will also be first in the overall Rugby World rankings. So there's still a lot on the line for the Springboks side, and they will not take this game lightly. They will come into it determined to try and make a real impact. And in a windy Wellington, which it is supposed to be quite breezy for the Wellingtonian weather, anything could happen out there on the field. It's the same with the Argentina versus Australia game. Argentina having some brilliant stats from the last match, just not quite able to get over the line, but they will come back even more determined than what we saw. And at the first match, we have got there Libok at 22. Rassie doesn't want to start him. Says Xander. I think it makes sense, though. Because at the end of the day, we saw Cobus Reinach alongside Sasha Feinberg, Ngome Zulu do very well off the bench together. So to break them up and go Cobus Reinach and Mani Libok, I don't think would make any sense. And Rassie's looking at combinations, who he can build together. That is why in a lot of departments, such as that centre duo, rather than just switching one player, we see both men getting switched, having backup options. Looks like a try. No, won't be the try for Waikato as of yet. No, close to scoring. Carter is a Lambo. Colby is a Honda Civic. So here's Jake. We have got there. You just need to start rolling out the side, not depending on Artie. And they can sub Scott Barrett too. Opens up either the lock or loose forward. So here's Red 7. Yeah, although Scott Barrett's been one of the busiest players out there on the field for New Zealand. I was looking through at a few of the stats, and he is currently sitting 4th in the overall standings for tackles made throughout the competition. In fact, he might even be 3rd. He is ahead of Artie Savia. The only 2 men ahead of him are Fraser McWright and Marcos Crema, who have both made 47 tackles from just the 3 games. 100% Bok, says Safrakiwi there. And with Leroy Carter, you'll get versatility, but with Caleb Tangital, you'll get more youth and time. Wingers typically peak at 25 to 27, says Tano 2. And also we have got there, Artie needs rest, says the AI. And what time is the match in Zimbabwe, says Peter Sinnons, Sissons. So the time for that game, I just want to very quickly make sure that Zimbabwe is the same time as South Africa. Because if it is, okay, it is. So tomorrow at 9:05 a.m. is when you'll be able to watch that game, PS. So be sure to pop in. We are going to be doing the play-by-play on the channel, as well as a big build-up for that game. Saturday Rugby, go the All Blacks tomorrow. Yes, and Crema might be the best player in the world at the moment. Says Safrakiwi. He just seems to be able to keep on stepping up. And quite a surprise with that Argentinian lineup is the fact that, I almost said Artie Savia, but Pablo Matera dropped from the starting lineup for that team. If All Blacks win with a bonus point, is the Rugby Championship over? Depends on what Australia do. Because the fact that Australia this year are looking a little bit more competitive than they have in the past, there is by no means an end to this Rugby Championship yet. It is all on the line. I believe South Africa are considered as the 3rd favourites at the moment, but if they win at Sky Stadium, that puts them straight back up to number 1. So, yeah, I think that there's still plenty of time. And until we see maybe if Australia go 1-1 with Argentina, or if New Zealand end up going 1-1 with the South Africans, that's when we're really going to know who's got the best chance. We have got, okay, quick question. Kano McCaw, Reed versus Khaleesi, Peter Steftatoya and Jasper. Which trio is better? Says Jake Toa. So you're going with a trio that's playing now compared to a trio that used to play. I feel like it's a tricky question because, of course, different eras of rugby, you've got different skill levels of opposition as well. There's a big knock on there from Harbour, not showing massive amount of skill there. But no, I feel like it's very hard to compare them because you are looking at 2 different eras. I assume you wanted me to say New Zealand just so that you can say we've got the better loose forward trio, but, you know, it's a bit different. Jasper Vesa, don't get me wrong, he's a phenomenal player, but I don't think he's the best 8 that South Africa has ever had. But I also do think that he's got potential if he can just sort out that discipline. I'm just saying, we're subbing Scott. Abies has done that before to inject the bench. Says Red 7, and for some reason I'm less nervous about tomorrow's game than Eden Park. Do you know if the professor still with the team? I know that Richie McCaw was with the team this week. I'm not too sure whether or not Wayne Smith is still in that environment. We have, okay, easy question. Aaron Smith and Dan Carter versus Faf and Pollard. I assume, once again, you want me to go with that Kiwi duo, but just don't underestimate South Africa is all I will say. And I feel like this young backline that they've got at the moment, it's very hard to know what they're going to do. A lot of South Africans that I have talked to have said they're either going to win by 15 or lose by 15, but either way, it's going to be a hell of a test match at Sky Stadium. How many games have we won in the Cake Tin? Not many recently. They were able to beat the French in Wellington, so that was a bonus for them. But this is the location where New Zealand have lost up against the Argentines for the first time on New Zealand soil. We did see South Africa beat the New Zealanders the most recent time, or in fact, the time before the most recent, because the most recent was actually a draw. So, you know, they've got a pretty decent record in Wellington. And I've seen the weather report. She's going to be blustery, really windy, really hard to get under that high ball. It's going to be a test and a half for Apalele Pasi as well as Damian McKenzie, but I'm sure both men will be looking forward to that challenge. We'll quickly have a look here We'll go for Saturday, and we'll chuck her in the wind factor. So the wind, it's going to be between 7 and 39 kilometres an hour, peaking towards the late afternoon, early evening, and gusts of up to 68 k's. Now, good luck managing to get that kick over with 68 k's. I wouldn't imagine if Roygaard was playing in front of the home crowd. It would have been pretty awesome to see this be his return, but I think we're going to see him back for the Rugby Championship. He's at least back training with the squad at the moment by the looks of it, or at least just kind of doing his rehab with the team. Don't know how much was far left, says Jake there. We have got there, considering his most recent action, says Kiwi Rob, hoping that the referee doesn't cost us. Says Kiwi, well, the referee in charge of this one will be Nika Amoshukeli, the Georgian referee. I don't mind him. I think he's an all right referee, to be fair. And I do think there's a lot of talk about the referee already, and the match is still about 24 hours away. Like, they get a lot of criticism. In fact, sometimes they get more criticism before a game than they do after and during the game. Who do you want to win the Rugby Championship? There's a part of me that wants to see it be 2-2 for every single side going into the last round, or the last two rounds, in fact, just because I feel like that would bring us one of the best Rugby Championships that we have had in quite some time. It's just Lucy's. There can be expectations. Collins will smash or will squash most in any era, says the AI underdog pick. And we have got Dan Carter has left the chat there too from Jake. But nonetheless, what we will do is we have got a guest, ladies and gentlemen. He is from, I would say, the other side of the world, but he is literally, because it's more north than in South Africa, but you'll hear the accent and know roughly where this man is from. But what we will do is I will click this button, and we will click this one as well. And just like this, we have got Vic from Vic and Vern Sports Chat. Welcome back again, mate. Big day tomorrow. You excited?
Very excited. Thanks for having me back. Hope you guys are doing well. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. To put it mildly, it's gonna be interesting.
Do you think there's less nerves this week than last week? I feel like there's a lot more of a laid-back energy about this game, isn't there, compared to the Eden Park one?
I think we mentioned it together, you and me. I think this is a win-win situation for Rassie. I think he's done this quite cleverly because he's changed the team. Unbelievable. And I mean, if he wins tomorrow, everybody will say in South Africa, genius. He put out all these young players. He's changed everything around. And if he loses, people say, well, he tried something. This is for the future. It's kind of like it's taking the pressure off everybody. And that might be a good thing. I mean, but from my point of view, the pressure's on. We have to win tomorrow. Do we win? I don't know. I think it's going to be very close. I mean, you guys have got a great lineup there as well. Some surprises in that lineup for me as well. I don't see the name Rico Iani anywhere, which is a surprise. But he hasn't played well lately. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people expected to see Caleb Clark's name in that number 11 jersey rather than Leroy Carter. Bit of a curveball. I didn't actually realise for a start that Carter was still available to get selected, because normally the guy who's an injury cover, when the injured player returns, such as a Caleb Clark, that's normally when they kick that guy back out into the NPC type of thing. But we're actually seeing Sevu Reece as the guy who's playing NPC rugby this weekend for Southland. We have got there, don't you lot ever sleep. Stoked for this game. Another close one, says Jimbo. Yeah, I feel like this game has... The thing is, I predicted a scoreline that I feel like's not going to be a mile away. I went 33-27. I think this is going to be a lot higher scoring. But then at the same time, looking at the wind report, 7 to 39 kilometres an hour with gusts up to 68 kilometres, it may not be the easiest day for kicking. And if that is the case, then maybe a bit more lower scoring. But I just feel like this game, we're going to learn so much about these two sides. New Zealand have made a couple switches. That McKenzie at 15, Will Jordan, as much as people don't like him as much on the right wing, he is the best bet at the moment due to that Amoni Narawa injury. A lot of pressure on Damian McKenzie too in Wellington.
I mean, look, I said McKenzie was for me the man of the match last week. I thought so. I just think he's the man you hate to love, basically, from our point of view, instead of love to hate. I mean, I just think he's a great player. And I said last week, I can't see him not being the starter at fullback this week, because he just deserved it on the way that he played. But that Leroy Carter, I'm excited to see him, good sevens rugby player, phenomenal, gives you guys a lot of pace. I think he's going to be a handful. So let's see what he can do. I mean, I'm a little worried, But at the end of the day, look, I don't think we can win the rugby championships anymore. I just don't think so, because I don't think we can. We'd have to win tomorrow with a bonus point and stop you from getting anything, and I don't think that's going to happen. I'm actually going to go a lot closer than you. I thought I'm going around. I'm almost choking because I'm going 24-21 Springboks. I think it's a tight one. I can't see a lot of points again, especially with that win factor and stuff like that. Yeah, so yeah, but I am excited with the Springbok lineup. It is basically what you'd say. Rassie has thrown everybody a nice curveball here. I don't think anybody would have come up with that starting lineup.
No, it was certainly the back line that I think stumped a lot of people. Maybe that change of Jasper Wiese at 8, I think 95% of people were seeing that kind of switch.
How long is he going to stay on the field?
Hopefully the whole game, but we'll have to wait to see. Of course, they have got Kwaka Smith as the lone loose forward off the bench, unless, of course, Andre Esterhuizen is considered as that hybrid player yet again. Although I do think Esterhuizen's inclusion will be more than likely for Willemse and bring together that Esterhuizen and Moody combo in the midfield. It's one that has worked decently for the Springboks in the past, but yeah, there's just something different about this backline that if they can gel, they will be extremely dangerous. But if they don't, and the All Blacks start like they did in the last match up against the Box, that's where maybe they will just be behind from the get-go, and that will be tough for a young side to be able to handle. You haven't got those experienced heads like an Etzebeth, like even in that backline, Dialendi, Jesse Creel. Normally they can calm everyone down and go, look, boys, we've started off a bit rough.
Those guys are worried. I can tell you one thing. If this lineup works, if these guys pull it off tomorrow and they have a great game, and let's just say they win by 10 points difference, or something ridiculous, maybe 15, which I think will never happen. But let's say they pull it off and they have a big win against New Zealand tomorrow. I mean, where does Rassie come off then, putting the old guys back in? I mean, then they've taken, I always say in sport, that they've been given a chance. If you take your chance and you do well, I mean, a lot of the older Eben, Villiers, okay, he's not playing. A lot of these guys are going to have to be worried for their spot, I think. If these guys pull it off tomorrow, the only one I don't think has to worry about his spot is Grant Williams. But I think if these guys pull it off, if this starting line, these 23 pull it off, it could be a seismic shift in what we'll see in 2027.
And I do still think Andre Pollard, when you see the weather report, he'll be pretty happy he didn't have the tee, because, he's got such a high regard of his kicking game, whereas Marnie, as well as Sasha, and it will be the same for the New Zealand kickers. This is going to be a hard win to be able to contest with out there on the park. We may see
world-class kickers. You've got 3 world-class kickers, all starting at the bloody same time. That's the problem. I mean, you've got Bowden Barrett, you've got Geordie Barrett, and you've got Damien McKenzie. So you've got 3 world-class kickers starting in the game. So the coach can go anywhere. He can go anywhere. Any one of those 3, and as a New Zealand fan, you will feel totally comfortable. I don't feel comfortable with Mongazulu kicking at the beginning. I don't, and then, like you said, and then come to the crunch time of the game, it's going to be up to Barney. He hasn't had the greatest kicker. Well, both of them, Mongazulu and Lebok, not the greatest kickers. And there's not. I expected Pollard on the bench, at least Pollard on the bench, but nothing. So yeah.
Do you think it was down to how Sasha played last week, though, that maybe got him that spot that perhaps was going to be Pollard's? Maybe it was going to be Lebok starting with Pollard off the bench had Sasha not had that same impact that he did, because we've got to remember they named the team on Monday. They had 2 days to think about it, and I think this side probably was already down on Sunday in terms of what they wanted to do. But yeah, there's a lot of excitement off the bench for both of these teams, and New Zealand, there's going to be some big tests. Someone like a Ruben Love coming into this game later on. Where do you put him when you've already got 3 or 4 fullbacks in the starting lineup? Could he be out on the wing like he was on his international debut? He got himself the double from that wing position. But I think it all comes down to injuries, to be honest. A lot of sides nowadays actually have to make those switches due to whoever gets hurt. And the sad reality is you don't go a game without 2 or 3 players going down
No,
now.
that's just the way it is these days, But, I mean, look, you talk about Ruben Love. I mean, look, your coach, he could throw a lot of curveballs because, you could bring Ruben Love in to replace Will Jordan. Will Jordan go to the 15. Mackenzie can go then to the 12 or to the 10 and to replace one of the Barretts. And one of the Barretts could be on the bench, He's got, with that back line, he's actually got a lot of options as well now with the way that they've been playing lately, I see Leroy Carter as probably playing the whole game. I'm surprised. Okay. I'm surprised that Noah, you call him Notham. I just break his name down and call him Hotham because I like him. I think he's a hot player. He plays well. I call him Hotham. But I think, I was surprised that he got the start over Christie.
Yep. I agree. I think that a lot of New Zealanders, it was weird because this week we've actually seen some people defending Finlay Christie, whereas normally they're trying to chuck him out of the side. But they were saying,
well last
credit,
week.
yeah, credit where credit's due.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, no, but it's more so what he's done in the past that seemed to rub people the wrong way. But to be honest, in the Eden Park Test match, where it mattered the most, he could have had a 2 out of 10, cost the All Blacks the game, but he was far from it. He was one of the better players out there on the field for New Zealand in terms of his decision-making. Hotham's a big risk here.
Yes.
Because he's about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of schedule when it comes to his injury return. And there's no denying, there's no denying how good of a player he is.
He's fantastic.
But if he gets smashed round the side of that breakdown or anything like that happens, he missteps when he's trying to go for a kick, we could end up seeing Christie play about 60 minutes anyway in this case if he does end up picking up another injury.
Hotham that had the big concussion earlier in the season? Well, no, wasn't he the one that was kind of folded up like a concertina in the Super Rugby? He had that big hit. Was that the game that we then saw Kyle Preston make his debut? That was the original Hotham injury. I think he's been on and off, hasn't he? Yeah,
in terms of the amount of injuries he's had.
A lot of people thought it was with his back. Remember when he kind of got folded up a little bit? So I don't know.
Actually, was that the Ratima injury at the end of the Argentina game? Was that the one that you're thinking of, or was it even earlier?
It was in the Super Rugby. It was in the Super Rugby during the season where I thought, but I like him a lot. But you guys, listen here. Compared to the Springboks, you have got 4 very, very good scrum halves to choose from. I mean, like you said, people in New Zealand might be the fan of Christie, but I always say, what have you done for me lately? And lately, he's been very good. A lot of people are, 5 years ago, he was good. That doesn't help you. You got to be good now. Christie was good last week. He was very good. Then you've got Notham, and then you've got Ratima and Roy Gott. So you've actually got 4 very good people to pick from. I think that's going to be very tough in 2 years' time with the coach has to come up who's going to the World Cup. He's going to leave one of them out.
Yeah, but the benefit that they've got is it's only a short plane ride away, isn't it? It's a bit easier to get a player from New Zealand to Australia than it is to get a guy from South Africa or England into Aussie. But we'll look through at the chat a little bit. We've got quite a bit of talk about Rassie and his selections there earlier on. I think Rassie is more concerned with the next World Cup than the championship. The thing is, though, for Rassie Erasmus, up until last week when they lost to Eden Park, the Rugby Championship was the concern.
Yes.
It almost seems in a lot of people's eyes, and it does sound quite bad to say, but it's as if now that there is a loss, everyone's gone, well, we don't care about this competition anymore. We're looking 2 years in the future, whereas Rassie's probably looking at it as, right, that didn't work. We've lost 2 games so far, but we're still a good enough side that if we can get a win here, and it might be an unpredictable one, I would still back South Africa to beat Argentina twice with the fact that Argentina don't play at home.
Yes.
And
yeah, you're right.
That still puts them right in the running for the Rugby Championship. So I feel like it's a little bit too early to completely rule this Springbok side out of a potential Rugby Championship comeback. Yes, the percentages aren't high, and yes, New Zealand are in the box seat. But, even just, they should at least want to finish second rather than just going, look, if we lose, and we'll take 3rd or 4th. That's not that mindset that got the Springboks to be double world champions.
Yeah. I've got a colleague of mine that lives in South Africa. Can't mention the name, but he's very close to the Springbok rugby setup. And he phoned me up and he said, "Listen here, this team that we're seeing for this Saturday's game was decided before the game in Ellis Park, in Eden Park. He said this was going to be the team in any case, barring any little injuries and stuff like that, that Ethan Hooker and Damien Willems, and then we're all going to get a chance in any case. So, Rassie always said at the beginning of the year, and he's been saying that for 2 years, I don't want to play any of my Springbok players maximum between 8 and 10 games a year.
Yep.
So, and we've still got, and then all of a sudden, and we've added extra internationals in this year. Then you have the autumn internationals where I think we're playing 5 games there. I think there'll be a lot of changes, but I'm just excited. Look, New Zealand, if you got to be honest, New Zealand is probably the favorites to win this one. They are at home. They won the last game. I think they've got more an established lineup. But my heart just can't let me go against the Springboks. That's why I'm going 24-21. I can't go against them. Not just that, my family, they won't feed me if I go against the Springboks. I might have to be on bread and water for a while. So I can't do that.
I see there from Jake as well. If both backlines click, it will be insane rugby. It will be. It could be. Like, the thing is, there's so much electricity in terms of both sides here that if both teams are gelling, because that's something that we saw last week didn't quite work. There were a huge amount of handling errors. And I actually learned that there were a total of about 33 lineouts and 12 scrums, so 45 set pieces throughout that game at Eden Park. That's not the kind of number that makes you super excited about some of the other stats throughout a game, but it's one of those games here that, yes, the wind will play a bit of a factor, but if both sides are defensively sound under that high ball, we could see some really good running rugby. In fact, it's normally what happens when sides go to Wellington. They just decide, right, the wind's a bit annoying. We might as well just run with this ball in hand rather than trying to play that kicking game.
So the weather could be a blessing in disguise for all of us, because I even think high up and unders, if it's the wind is blowing very strong, you've got to be careful of them. So let's just hope they just forget about the kicking, not totally, but, not because definitely we kicked too much last week from the breakdown games, from the maulings and stuff like that. I think if we can, I just want to see some running rugby, and because we've got 2 teams that, if you look at the 2 backlines, Leroy Carter, Ethan Hooker, Willems, Geordie Barrett, you've got a lot of players that can just run the ball. But I hope we have an exciting rugby game. I hope we have a good rugby game with a narrow Springbok win.
Okay. I feel like that's an acceptable. What did you say scoreline? 24-21, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see, and that's the problem. Even if South Africa, with that scoreline, we'll get 4 points, and we'll still be behind New Zealand. You must probably get 1 point, and then we'll still be 2 points behind you in the table. And then, do we South Africans go out there and rely on Australia to do us a favor?
Well, they certainly didn't do you any favors in round number 1, did they?
No, and if they win, and if they win tomorrow, and they win one of the 2 games in New Zealand, they could win the Rugby Championship.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be a big couple games for South Africa up against Argentina in terms of if they need to play that little bit more catch-up. Someone said about the Wellington weather being very unpredictable, so many changes in one day. Yeah, the thing is, at the moment, the rain doesn't sound like it's going to be much of a factor. Only about maybe 20% round lunchtime or something. So it will still be a little bit slippery underfoot, but I think that wind factor.
What you're saying, the Wellington weather is as unpredictable as Rassie and his lineups.
Pretty much, yeah. Changes every hour, I would say, in that regard. But I do have a question about this Rassie lineup as well. Do you think we're going to see a little bit of reverse psychology for this game? Looking at it on paper, she's looking like it's going to be running every day of the week. Kicking tactics from South Africa in this game, you think? Do you think it's going to be one of those ones that the All Blacks should expect a fast game and then it's just the complete opposite heading into this match?
I don't know. You never know. What do you, as a coach, what do you want? You obviously want to always surprise your opponent. So I don't know, but I don't think so. I just don't think in the kicking department. Okay, I think Kobus Reinach is the better kicker than what's his name is, the Grant Williams. I think we showed it last week. His kicks were a lot better. We could put the New Zealanders a little bit more under pressure. But I don't know. I wouldn't even try to guess what Rassie's going to think, because that'd just fry my own brain. But look, we've got some strong people out there. I mean, if you think of the back line, Khaleesi, Steph du Toit, and Visa. I mean, on paper, that's most people say that's our best three there.
Yeah. And
maybe
looking
not
at
as
what
agile and quick as the New Zealand three, but I think power-wise, yes. I think they've got more power. I think New Zealanders are more foot speed and stuff like that will get to them. Then, I mean, Ruan Nortje, Lutiaga, two big boys. I think we've gone actually with a very strong front eight,
Yeah.
And
I do think
as well.
That seems to be where Rassie had decided that no matter what was going to happen, they still wanted pretty much consistency across that 4-pack as well, rather than going for any sort of randomness, and because you just can't afford to change absolutely everything. And I do think that, yes, out of all of the sides to be able to do that, South Africa is probably the only team that could make 10 switches to a lineup and still win a game the next week. But in this type of matchup away from home, it just is going to be a mountain to climb. But these young players in the back line, this will be, for some of them, like Ethan Hooker, this is the big opportunity to see what he can do. And I do see that there are a couple guys right on the verge of coming back for the South Africans. Edwell van der Merwe actually playing for the Sharks in the warm-up game of the URC I saw. So he might be right on the verge of back in there for the Argentinian test matches. So for Hooker, he needs a big game. And I do feel like in this type of matchup, he is up against Will Jordan. So the wingers, in both cases, it's a young winger versus the experienced head. Will Jordan, he's still pretty young though, but he's the more experienced in this factor, up against Ethan Hooker. And then on the other side, you've got Leroy Carter, Cheslin Colby.
Yeah, that should be a nice matchup. That should be an exciting match. Look, let's put it this way. Ethan Hooker has got to take this chance, because if everybody's healthy, it's Curtly Arnes' spot, the number 11. Yeah. So Ethan Hooker would normally be the backup in that position. I'm actually very surprised that we haven't seen Makatsoli Mapimpi at all. He was called up as cover for the injuries, and we haven't seen him at all, which kind of surprises me.
Well, even on the bench. Even Faf de Klerk as another guy that was brought in as the injury kind of cover. It looks like Waikato were just about to score, by the way, in the 75th minute of that contest up against North Harbour. They have taken the lead back. I've been watching the NPC in the corner of my eye for this one as well, just because, of course, a few guys right on the verge of those All Blacks call-ups. Mark Talia actually tearing it up for North Harbour at this stage. We've got there, I need to see the rest of Dude's t-shirt. I'm not, with a question mark. Yeah, we can only see that I'm not getting old. I'm becoming a legend. Well, there you go. Can't argue with that. We got Cameron Honeycomb over Jasper Visa will allow a nice mix of agility and power. Well, that's the thing. Visa, he is all gas in terms of just those breakdowns. He's going to hit everything 110%.
He doesn't know how to play. He doesn't know how to play measured. He doesn't know how to play measured.
It's either 100 going for it or it's nothing at all, because he's suspended.
I guess when his mother was pregnant with him, he just popped out within 3 seconds, 100%, bang. That's just the way he's been his whole life. He doesn't do 80% or measure himself. It's always 150%, and that's what gets him into trouble a lot of times. Yeah. He reminds me of somebody I know. Won't mention any names.
But, yeah, Visa, he was one of the danger men for South Africa last year up against New Zealand in terms of being able to get just into those breakdowns. And New Zealand, their loose forward trio, you've got Savia, who's normally known for getting those steals, including crucial one at the end at Eden Park. You've also, alongside that, got Simon Parker, who made the most tackles out of any All Black or any player in that last match with 15. And then Wallace Satiti with the most carries out of any player in that last game with 13. So it is a busy loose forward trio, and that's where South Africa will really be tested. They have to make sure that when Khaleesi returns to 6, he's going to be able to shine. We both thought maybe Marco van Staden could have been somewhere in the mix here, but they have decided Kwaka off the bench instead. But he's going to be a good game.
I think he played the last 5 games, didn't he?
He did, but he only got 5 minutes off the bench in the last match, I believe. Or did he get to start?
He played both against Australia, and then I think in the summer internationals he played a lot. So I think that's where that comes in, trying to save some of the players, not the fatigue aspect there. But I'm happy. Look, I'm actually quite excited with this lineup. A lot of people, I was reading newspapers of people. Rassie's lost the plot. He's gone crazy with this lineup. I can tell you one thing: the coach of New Zealand didn't expect this lineup.
No, and he also didn't expect it to be announced so early in the week. I think that was a big telling point. I do see that fun start and actually started and then came off at 70 minutes and then went back on at 75 for Sia Kolisi, who did go off at 51, back on at 70, and then off at 75. So he had a very busy day of on and off, rotating subs there for the Boks.
I don't know how healthy that is in sports, because I mean, look, because you play, you got your muscles warm. I don't see it like in American football or stuff. I don't see them going to the sideline and sitting on a bicycle or keeping themselves warm. So I kind of always wonder when somebody comes off like that and they wrap themselves in a coat. It's not that warm at the moment there in New Zealand. You're sitting on the bench and then all of a sudden you've got to go back out. Couldn't that cause injuries?
It could do. Down? And you also do see it, even in that British and Irish Lions tour, when we saw that hour or so delay for the players, there were some of them just trying to run around. And for players, some of them seem to be able to go 150% again right from the get-go once you make your way back on. But for others, it seems to be a little bit more of a slower build. And I do think that, for someone like a Kolisi, he is best when he's just in the rhythm and just going about his work. Same with someone like a Pieter-Steph du Toit. I feel like once du Toit goes off, and then when he has to come back on, like if he has an HIA or something, he just never quite finds that same stride after the little break.
Where do you think the change is going to come for South Africa? Look, because I think actually Kwagga Smith is going to come on for Sia during the game. I think Kwagga will go to 6.
Yeah, I think that's most likely, to be honest.
And Archie, I think Archie will come on for Luke de Jager. And then, of course, the other 3 that they kind of Van der Merwe, Wessels, and Lowe must probably come on for Ox, Marks, and du Toit.
Yeah.
Then the question is, what happens? Pieter-Steph maybe not feeling it one up. Do we stick Andre Esterhuizen in 7 or 8 somewhere?
I think that they would, and I think that if Kolisi's going off for Smith, they'll probably put Andre Esterhuizen into the 6 and then move Kwagga Smith to either 7 or 8, depending on what position needs filled. I guess that's one bonus of the fact that he's had some minutes, but also there's a lot of people who have said, just get him at 12. He was extremely dangerous in that jersey, and sometimes it can be the case of too much versatility in some regards.
He's a big man. He's a even for the, when he plays 12, there's not a lot of players on that 12 position that are that physically strong as Esterhuizen. He's a big man. New Zealand fans, don't jump off your stools now and don't attack me on TV. I'm not comparing the two. But from his build and the way he plays rugby, not on the same level, I'm saying it again, but got a little bit of Jonah Lomo kind of body to him,
He is a big man. And
he also plays that violent kind of rugby when he runs. He looks for the contact because he knows, if he's going to play, the guy that's going to most probably tackle him is physically smaller. He looks for that, But New Zealanders must probably now falling off their chairs because I put Jonah Lomo and Andre Esterhuizen in the same sentence. But it's just, the kind of way they play.
Yeah. And due to that frame, that would be very handy in the midfield too for them. Although they've still got Damien Dialendi in the equation too. But yeah, I do think that this midfield is where I'm so curious about for the South Africans, because you're in the scenario here how Valimza at times, I was rewatching that first game up against the Australians and he did struggle defensively, but then that was from 15. There were times where he was just jogging and Australia would get a line break, go straight past him.
Missing tackles.
Yeah.
And look, a lot of people missed tackles in that game. In that first Aussie game, I was pulling the few hairs that I still have at the back of my head here. I was pulling them out. We were missing tackles like crazy. And I kind of find that could be, with this lineup, Cannon Moody misses quite a few tackles. Damien Willemse, let's see, Farsi's not always the greatest tackler. So I could see New Zealand could exploit that if everything goes well for them. I just hope that we just got to have a better start. We can't give you that jump of 14-0 up again. That's not going to happen. That can't happen. If that happens, we're in trouble.
Yeah. And looking at that tackling stat as well, South Africa 80.9% for their Rugby Championship, whereas the next lowest is actually New Zealand with 84.8. Argentina sitting at the top of the bunch with 88.1, but they sit in last place at the moment in the overall standings. So there are a lot of statistics here that are almost reversed in terms of the amount of something that's happened puts a side closer to the top. New Zealand, less metres gained than any other side in this Rugby Championship, with more than 400 less than any team, yet they sit number one. Only the 709 metres gained.
But they're clinical. New Zealand have been very clinical. What I've seen, they've been very, when they're in that, what I call the red zone, basically, when they're in that, they're like in the 22, and they seem to score their points. Well, a lot of other teams, they get into the 22. I mean, you saw it last week with that beautiful hold up there from Rico Ioane, where score that and the game changes. If that's a try, it could be different. Other way around, New Zealand would have scored that try at the moment. They're very clinical when they can score points, they take the points. I've watched New Zealand, South Africa, Argentina, Australia. A lot of chances, 5 meters out, 3 meters out, and then either they lose the ball, it's held up, or the other team, do something. New Zealand is clinical at the moment. They're finishing their I call them drives. They're scoring drives. They're finishing them. They're taking the points, where other teams at the moment are very wasteful. South Africa's been very wasteful with their opportunities.
Yeah, and I feel like once it finally clicks, that is when a lot of teams will be in trouble up against the South Africans. Luckily for New Zealand, it wasn't at Eden Park, because, I mean, you could list the errors that South Africa made. Like, it would be more than just on one hand. Every time that ball was dropped in a crucial position. Yeah, that's definitely not what we used to see, and less than 80% for the South Africans. I think New Zealand were only at 80% as well. It was actually it was a pretty competitive type of line-out day, and maybe that is where Malcolm Mark's keeping his spot compared to New Zealand having to switch to Samisoni Taukei'aho could be that little bit of an advantage, although Taukei'aho's right up there with try scorers in the competition at the moment.
Malcolm Marks, I always say that he never has two bad games. I thought he was bad last week. Bad, maybe a strong word. Just wasn't good last week. He just wasn't his normal Malcolm Marks high-level self. So I'm hoping that was his blip, and if he gives us a good game from that position, that'll help us a lot. That'll help us. Ox has maybe been our most consistent player. If you take out of the front line, he's been the most consistent player this rugby season.
Yeah, and we've got to be harder on the big lads who don't have great cardio, and that is where, both of these sides do have to empty that gas tank, although I think New Zealand, they would have been a little bit cautious of South Africa in that last 20 minutes, because that was actually when the Boks started to find their rhythm, when those subs were made. So perhaps it was the case of the big men in the first half emptying the tanks, but just didn't quite empty them in the right ways.
Right.
Whereas in this game, if they're a lot more clinical, like we've mentioned, that could bode extremely well for the side. Do you think South Africa is thinking about the Freedom Cup? Question for both of you. I don't think so. I think they're just thinking about this next game of rugby. Rassie, he will have certain things on his mind, but one thing that he will definitely want from this game is just to get the victory under the belt. Yes, it's going to be hard, but he knows that if this young team does it, then he is going to be big time praised, because this is a lineup that no coach around the world would be willing to do.
No, look, the man is willing to take the risk. It's been since he started being in the Springboks setup. I mean, he's always willing to take that risk. He's not shy of trying something new. Where a lot of other coaches, they always take the safe route. Rassie doesn't take the safe route, and I always say, for the brave get rewarded. Sometimes, and maybe his bravery is going to get rewarded tomorrow. We hope so. And look, if he wins this game, and let's say he wins it comfortably tomorrow, look, the newspapers are going to kind of ask where they can put the next Rassie statue somewhere in Cape Town or in Johannesburg or something like that. This is the way the people are in South Africa. When everything's good, it's like, whoa. When it's bad, whoa. We get on people's cases quite early about it. Now, where do you see New Zealand's weakness, so that I can phone Rassie afterwards and tell him?
I would say from that first game, it was probably the scrum. overall. I think that the scrum, any time that a scrum went down, I could see that there were a lot of nervous Kiwis in the chat, because it just seemed to be definitely that scrum in the second half where South Africa just bulldozed over the top of New Zealand. Like, that will always be a bit of a concern in the back of the Kiwis' mind. Now, they've made some adjustments in terms of that front row, and perhaps that is something that Scott Robertson looked at as well and said, look, we weren't quite where we needed to be for the scrums. But I do think set piece is somewhere that if South Africa are clinical, they can just rip you apart. But we haven't seen them be clinical yet.
No,
so that's the big bonus. And even in that game up against the Australians that they won, some would argue it wasn't still the most clinical performance from the South Africans. It was better, but
I actually thought, people have criticized me because we deservedly lost the first game because, we killed them for 20 minutes and I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened after 20 minutes. But in the second game, I felt we quite, we got lucky to win the second one. I don't think it was like convincing win. I think there could have easily been an Australian win. This Rugby Championships could have been over by now. Had Australia won the second one in South Africa, they win tomorrow, I think they could have won the Rugby Championships by now. I just think we haven't. And our benches, last week was the first bench game that I've seen for a while that our bench brought an impact, was going to change the game. I thought if that game had gone another 5 minutes last week, I think we could have got the draw.
Yeah.
But
the biggest thing about it was 5-3, wasn't it? Off the bench rather than the 6-2, which is so weird to see that was where the impact came from with the extra backs as well. But to be fair, Reinach, he did exactly what he needed to off the bench. We saw the one who was probably the least noticeable off the bench was probably Ethan Hooker overall. But then at the same time, if he was supposed to be starting in this game already pre-planned, makes sense why they'd want him to have some minutes in New Zealand beforehand. But yeah, like players overall, there's just so many X-Factor guys out there on the park for both teams. And it's just going to be a really good game.
Look, last week, for me, the best three players from South Africa was Kobus Reinach, of course, Sasha, and Kwaka Smith. Kwaka Smith, I don't know. I just like Kwaka. He never lets me down. The guy is always solid, So, but New Zealand, look, I wouldn't bet, they say tight as a duck's ass, stingy bugger. I wouldn't bet any money on this game.
Yeah,
I'm not a betting man in any case. So I wouldn't bet any money on this game. But if you were a betting man, you must probably go to New Zealand because they are at home. But I'm going to stick with a slight win for South Africa. Makes, like you said, maybe we can get Argentina winning and South Africa winning, and it tightens up that whole thing. And then those last two competitions, South Africa against Argentina and Australia against New Zealand, should be quite interesting,
Well, I think it would bring one of the most anticipated Bleisloe Cups in quite some time, if that was the case. Definitely if somehow Australia were able to pull off an upset in that.
What's worse for New Zealanders? Okay. Mm-hmm. Let's say you lose tomorrow to the Springboks, fine. Okay, let's go. Okay. What is worse if you lose the Rugby Championship because Australia beat you?
Do they also get the Bleisloe, or is it a drawn Bleisloe and New Zealand retain it?
No, they get the Bleisloe and they win the Rugby Championship. Is that worth? Would you prefer to lose to South Africa or to Australia? You being a New Zealander, what is worse for you? Or is the mongrels across the Tasman there that you don't like, or is it more? Is your South Africa your biggest one?
I think it would depend on who you talk to, because. Okay. There are a few Kiwis that I know of that want a competitive Bleisloe Cup. Now, of course, it's easy to say that when New Zealand have won it for however many years in a row. And maybe once Australia win it, then that changes a lot of people's opinions. But I think that if Australia beat New Zealand twice and took the Bleisloe, they thoroughly deserve the Rugby Championship as well. Of course. Like, it would be such a massive deal for the side that have... you just look at that last World Cup and where Australia were missing out on the group stages. They did a lot better in that British and Irish Lions tour than some anticipated. Bit of controversy around that one. Some thought the Aussies won that series, but of course the results.
I thought that second test, I thought they were robbed. That's just my person. I thought that second test, that was daylight robbery, man. But I don't know. I think Australia's on the right path, man.
Yeah, I think that they're stepping in the right direction. Super Rugby AU actually starting up tonight, where we are going to get to see the Western Force and the Waratahs go head-to-head. The Reds and the Brumbies playing on Sunday. So just a little bit of extra rugby for those Australian guys outside of the international window. But, a few of those guys looking through at the team sheet, similar to what we saw for Super Rugby minus the Wallabies. Could be some depth being built at the moment in Australia, heading towards that Rugby World Cup. We have got their... I guess I'm going with the Fortress, says the AI, in terms of damn, so we got to give up that trophy sitting for the other, says the AI. And also, New Zealand isn't losing at Eden Park, says Kiwi Rob. Well, that's the other side of things. Well, now that you've said that, that is true.
Wouldn't that just be typical of sports? South Africa, the team that you're most afraid of getting your record at Eden Park would be the Springboks. We don't do it. And then the Dingoes come over, the Tasman, and they beat you at Eden Park. Whoa. That would be I think that would be a shock, wouldn't it?
It would be quite the shock. Although there's also just a random chance that some side that faced New Zealand in a July series, I feel like it's once again, it's that brutal saying that everyone seems to go with. But I think New Zealanders would say anyone but England to end that Eden Park streak,
Maybe they have to bring the true full French side again, because they were the last ones to win that. Maybe they need the Duponts and all the boys to come down to New Zealand to play at Eden Park. You never know. You never know.
And hopefully, I don't actually know who New Zealand have July next year. Does anyone know? Has it been announced? I'd assume it's either Scotland or I don't think we're quite at Ireland again yet. Is it? It would be like Scotland or Italy or Wales or someone, I'd say, next year.
When is that New Zealand tour of South Africa? That's 27 or 26?
I think that's next year during Rugby Championship time, isn't it? It's the Nations Cup, says Kiwi Rob. Oh, so we'd be playing multiple teams, wouldn't we, rather than just a one-off tour like we had up against France just recently. We all know that Australia will beat us in Eden Park, says Red 7 there. And also we've got that dude last time Aussie won Bleisloe, Razor was sober, says Jake Doll. Well, Razor wouldn't have been very old whatsoever.
I do not know Razor's drinking habits. I do not know his drinking habits.
Scott Robertson's 51. When did Australia have the Bleisloe? I think about 2003, wasn't it?
What was before the that World Cup that England won, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. 2002 was the last time. So we're talking 23 years ago. So Razor would have been mid-20s at that stage, to be fair to him. Okay. So it's hard to tell what he would have been doing. We have got the only Auckland talks about Eden Park, says Dave there. And, well, to be fair, if you're in Auckland and you keep on talking about it, that does mean that if the media and the kind of New Zealand rugby look at it and see the hype around it, they're probably going to put more games there. So it's almost strategic marketing from the locals, isn't it? It's like if you had like a random, I don't even know what an example is, a tennis court in your backyard.
See more live rugby.
And there's been a fair amount in Auckland as of recently. We're going to get to see the Warriors in action for the NRL. They have got their elimination final coming up this weekend at Mount Smart. And Vic, what was your score prediction for last week's game, Box versus New Zealand? Did you have a score prediction?
I went 12-9 or 15-12, something like that. I had a very, I said there would be no tries, only kicking. I think I went 12-9 or 15-12, but for the Springboks, obviously. I said it was going to be a 3-point game. I'm going with a 3-point game again today. I actually didn't see any tries coming last week because I thought, it could be very tight. But look, I don't mind if we get a 38-35. I don't mind either. No problem. But I just think there's two good defensive teams out there. I think from both sides, the defense is tough. I don't think you score 4 or 5 tries. I don't think any team will get a bonus point with tries. I don't think so.
Okay, Echoes here back in 2022. There were only 2 or 3 South African expat families on the North Shore. So here's Echo there. Yeah, we see a lot more South Africans.
Listen, Perth has changed its name. It's not Perth anymore. It's Perthoria. There's more South Africans living in Perth than there are in South Africa, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of South Africans around New Zealand and Australia now. I'm curious to know, and I know that it's something that will cause controversy, but I want to know when we see a South African player reach the All Blacks. I know that Geordie Phil-Ewan, he is probably the guy at the moment who's the most close in terms of having that option of playing for both and then picking New Zealand at this stage. Not quite getting to international level, but he's currently in Super Rugby. But, you know, our cricket team was full of about half South Africans, wasn't it? So
no, but listen, when it comes to rugby, we do our, you know, like the, how do you say that? I'm trying to find the word now. We do development help. We don't do with New Zealand. You don't need it. We send our lesser players to Scotland, because Scotland's actually South Africa's D team, you know. We've got a lot of South Africans in the Scottish lineup. We don't need to send them to New Zealand. You've got plenty enough rugby players. And the ones that you're missing, you take from the island boys, man.
I feel like you've just decided, why not end on controversy for this preview? But no, it's going to be interesting. This matchup, honestly, I hope the wind settles down and that we get a high-scoring game like we're both anticipating, or at least somewhere up there.
Are you still shaving anything? Or is anything on the line?
I went to the barber today, and she pretty much said, hey, if they lose, come back in next week and we'll film it. So
yes,
it's
definitely
an option. But I did get a haircut so that it's slightly shorter now. But I think, you know, if we hit a certain light goal, I will still be willing to buzz cut it. Okay, but I feel like it's got to be a decent light goal that we wouldn't normally hit. You know, I've got to add that risk reward factor into there too. Oh, we have got the 50 points, Hamish wax his eyebrows. No, we're keeping the eyebrows.
Everyone, the eyebrows.
They always want my eyebrows off for some reason. I think they just want to see
eyebrows.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, they just want to see what it looks like if I have no hair whatsoever.
We'll get Vern to do a live bikini wax on the channel.
I don't know if YouTube would allow that. But we'll certainly have to get you guys on once again for the post-match and see how the tension's going at that point.
Listen here, if we win, please bring those two friends of yours again.
I will do. I think they'll be keen. One of them's currently on a plane flying back from China, but I believe he is back in time for that next stream.
What are you doing in China?
I think it was part of his job or something, some sort of course over there or something. He does something around teaching of some sort, but I don't know many teachers who go to China, so it must be pretty fancy.
Maybe he teaches Mandarin or something like that. I don't know.
I haven't actually asked. Maybe I should. We'll be able to. In fact, you could possibly ask him.
I'm going to ask
in the post-match review.
Who went to China? The quiet one?
No, the loud one.
Okay, all right. Okay.
So he will certainly give you a response, I would say.
There you go. Listen here. And if we lose, just don't bring them, because oh, jeez. No, we can handle it. Don't worry. Like I said, you know, I always say the World Cup counts more than the Rugby Championship, so we'll see.
Well, I saw, the thing is, it's very hard to stay away from social media throughout the lineups and everything being announced. I want to get your opinion on one comment that I saw. Now, I'd like to think that this is not a common kind of comment, but I've got it here. Where did it go? I had it here. It's now disappeared. I'm going to find it.
Don't worry.
Where is it? This is the pressure of it now, isn't it? It's disappeared.
It's always when you're on live and stuff like that, you must probably take it out and find it.
It is. Right, I've found it. Okay. So, I saw a little bit of a common factor. Now, once again, I don't think this is a massive group, but there were a few South Africans saying that this is a disrespectful New Zealand lineup with the way that they've shaped up here.
The New Zealand lineup is disrespectful?
Yes.
Why should they?
Because of the amount of changes, with the fact that there's about 35% changing in the team.
So that person that said that, I mean, okay, I'm going to be nice. I'm not going to say dumbass or anything like that. I mean, how many changes did we make in the Springbok team?
But his then reply later was, we're allowed to leave the experience or the experiments to the world champs.
No. Look, look. we don't like we know we don't actually know. I always say you don't know what has happened during the practice. Who has a niggle? Who has a little bit of maybe a hamstring or something like that? Or somebody got a light concussion maybe, and as a coach, you don't want to go out and say my man has a concussion, because then he's 2 weeks out of the business. So what you can do is you just keep it quiet, you keep it in-house, and you say, okay, look, I've decided not to play him this week because that concussion might go away in 3, 4, 5 days. That's that little concussion. But now there's nothing disrespectful about that New Zealand team. I think it's a bloody strong New Zealand team. Yes, there's no Rico Ioane, but let's be honest, he doesn't deserve to play. I mean, okay, he held up that one ball last week. We'll give it to him that there. But otherwise, he's not against Argentina. He wasn't impressive.
No, and he has struggled a little bit. And honestly, if Leroy Carter has a blinder here, I think for a lot of people's pecking orders, it would be, I still think Caleb Clark sits at the top for a lot of people.
But you like Caleb Clark. We know that you like him a lot.
I have backed Caleb Clark, even during that time. Like, I backed him before that Super Rugby season where he scored about 11 tries and then went on to become the highest scorer of the Rugby Championship. And people called me an idiot. They said, no, he's just overhyped. But when he plays well, he's bloody good out on that left wing. Super Rugby season, he didn't score a single try, so people started going, doesn't deserve the AB's kit. But I think once he puts it back on, he will be once again a mainstay, definitely in the absence of, at the moment, some Rico Ioane brilliance out on that left wing. So, if Leroy Carter plays well here, we could see Ioane end up being second or third choice out on that left wing side. But the question is, are they just going to give Leroy Carter one game and then that's it? Because, of course, with Clark back in,
I always say, look, I mean, I'm always of the opinion, if that is in rugby, if it's in football, if you go and you say, listen here, I'm going to back this kid, I want to give him a chance in my team. I think every player, if you want to give somebody a chance, when you say, I can see this kid has got a future, whatever, you've got to give him 2 to 3 games. You've got to give him 2 to 3 games because, I mean, playing bad is not always up to you on your own. I mean, if people around you are not up to scratch, look, he might. What happens if the scrum half decides to kick a goddamn ball all the time? He might never get a chance to shine or show anything. I mean, if he was playing for South Africa last week, he could have sat on the bench because we were never getting the ball out wide in the first half. So, no, I think you've always got to give somebody 2 to 3 games to show them. And, and it is it's a tough test against South Africa. We know that. But I think he'll shine. I think he's going to have a good game because, look, he's a quality player. But what I do think is New Zealand like to get a lot of players from that rugby sevens. That's a nice pool there to take players from the sevens,
Well, I think at the moment there's a couple more guys right on the verge of making their way in. Caleb Tangitau, for one, I think is going to be a guy that we see in an All Blacks kit within the next kind of 3 or 4 years, definitely on that left wing side if there are still struggles in terms of who to select in that department. Another man to keep an eye out for, he's a hard name to pronounce, but Fihi Finian-Norfo. He is someone...
Good thing you pronounced it and I didn't, because people will be on my case again.
He's been tearing it up for Bay of Plenty, and it was actually him and Leroy Carter in that midfield combo for Bay of Plenty in one of the first rounds of the NPC. Plus, it just seems to be as soon as any guy gets a few tries for the New Zealand Sevens, he gets swooped in by a Super Rugby side and they end up signing him. Like Tangitau, we saw what he was able to do for the Highlanders. When he was at the Blues, he got like 1 or 2 games. He was given hardly any game time. The Highlanders said, look, come on down. And then he got injured, sadly. But that was, of course, after we already saw what kind of potential he has. So, yeah, I don't think that the Sevens setup at the moment is not going to be a direct feeder into this All Blacks future team, depending on what type of play Razor wants to see as well. I think that some of those guys who are almost, in certain regards, hybrid players who can play about 3 or 4 positions, I think they'll be extremely crucial moving forward. And look at, for the South Africans, Quagga Smith, what he was able to do from that Sevens background.
Yeah. I mean, I was listening to, I can't remember which podcast it was. And they were talking about Australia, and they were saying, and they kind of put in Australian, and they mentioned like 7 to 8 players that they thought from the rugby league that they should be putting in, for the next World Cup, try to entice them to come in for the next Rugby World Cup. Because, we know Australia has also got a big potential pool, but it's all in rugby league as well, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, see, it's the tricky one because I think until Australia, there might be a couple of guys the year before say, oh, I'm going to jump over because I want to try and play in that World Cup.
Yep.
But it might be a bit similar to what we saw for the likes of Tonga and Samoa and whatnot, how all those big guys all of a sudden become interested when the World Cup's on. And then very next year afterwards, they just go, nah, we're actually going to leave now. We'll see you in 4 years for the next one.
Yeah. No, but look, it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a good game on Saturday. 2 good games. And I think we've got 2 fantastic Currie Cup games coming up as well. Women's Rugby World Cup, we haven't even mentioned that. I can congratulate you there already. I said, if so, anything under 50-point difference, if we lose by less than 50, I'll be happy with the woman. If we lose by less than 30, I think that's a phenomenal achievement from the young Springbok ladies. And I'm going to be doing the Samoa against the USA on Sunday morning because that's got World Cup implications because the loser's out, right? 100%.
I believe so, or at least out to the repechage in that case. And then whoever wins it, I believe, gets themselves qualification for the World Cup. And there's a lot of pressure on the US to be able to do that. Definitely if they are supposed to be hosting that 2031 Rugby World Cup.
That's still up in the air, right?
I think there were talks of maybe it going somewhere else, but I think 2035 became the more talking point of where it's going to end up. I think that Saudi Arabia want the 2035 one. But overall, for the US, I think they get automatic qualification if they do end up hosting. So that's one bonus. But they at least need to be at the World Cup prior to build a little bit of hype heading into their own competition. I
think 2035, have it in New Zealand, the Rugby World Cup, a little bit of tradition, have it in New Zealand. It most probably won't be because the next one's in Australia. But, South Africa, we could do the Rugby World Cup. We haven't had one since 1995. I mean, it's been 30 years.
You see, I know that the last World Cup, or in fact 2031, I think was the one that there were possibly a few bids coming from South Africa about whether or not that was an option. I don't think that France overall, because when did England last have it?
I think it feels like to me that England always has the bloody thing.
I think that's just because of Twickenham, though, isn't it? How it just seems like Japan had one, of course.
It's never been in Argentina, has it?
I don't think so, and that would be an interesting option that they could look at in the future.
Then again, it's all about the finances, I think the Southern Hemisphere teams, the financing is the problem. Yeah.
What about Ireland? Has Ireland hosted a rugby? In fact, they'd probably have to do like a co-host, wouldn't they, if it was Ireland?
Yeah, Ireland, Scotland.
Yeah. Well, we'll wait and see.
But when last was it in New Zealand?
I think New Zealand had it 2011 was the last time New Zealand had it. So only a few World Cups ago. So I don't know if they'd go back so quickly. Whether or not they might look at maybe north. They normally go north-south.
Beautiful, man. That time of the year in October, September, October is beautiful time in Spain. Spain is an up-and-coming nation. They've got great stadiums. You can have them in the Real Madrid Stadium, in the Barcelona Stadium, fantastic stadiums. And, for all the people in Europe, it's easy to get to Spain. Spain could be an option, I don't want to Saudi Arabia. Come on. Fucking hell. I mean, they have no rugby culture, man. Let's be honest. I have nothing against Saudi Arabia. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, fantastic country, whatever. I don't get into politics. But rugby in Saudi Arabia.
Well, because they had the Football World Cup there, didn't they?
No, that was in Qatar.
Oh, in Qatar. Okay.
They want the next Football World Cup is in Saudi Arabia after this one. The one's in America now, and then it goes to Saudi Arabia, No. Rugby, if we're going to grow the brand of rugby, you're not growing the brand of rugby in Saudi Arabia. It's not like they're going to have all of a sudden 20 rugby teams pop up in Saudi Arabia. Then I'd rather go have it in Spain, have it in Italy.
It could be a decent option in Italy, to be fair. I feel like a European co-host could maybe
Spain,
be on the cards.
Good option there,
We bid for co-host with Wales and Scotland, but France won. Okay. So France got that last World Cup, the 2023, head of Wales and Scotland. And we have got I'm the CM for a Spanish club, and it would be large over here, says Pascal. Yeah, I do think that as Spain start to grow in the rugby world, definitely with the sevens, the way that they've been able to really come out of nowhere over last year, the under-20s as well, great to see them progressing.
The women's Spain team didn't look shabby against New Zealand either. I mean, it wasn't. A lot of people said this can be like a 100-point game. No, it wasn't. The Spanish everywhere they're doing really well in rugby. I think they've got good structures there, and the more the merrier. I always say we need a lot of good rugby teams and rugby nations because rugby it's very much. Okay, in football, it's also like there's only going to be 6 nations that are going to win the Football World Cup, but you do have 48 teams going to the World Cup. I think in rugby, we can do with a lot more of the so-called tier 3 and 4 teams pushing on. I mean, Georgia's pushing on nicely. Italy has come good. Argentina's maybe the biggest push that they've made in the last few years,
Yeah. We have got there back to South Africa as well. Someone said, why did South Africa abandon the kicking game last week? I think that they abandoned it because it wasn't really working.
No, it wasn't.
They were finding themselves going further and further behind, and whether or not that was just that the kicks weren't right in terms of the distance on them and whatnot. But, yeah, I think that the most dangerous South Africa looked is when they gave up on, what it sounds bad, but that structure and just went to playing rugby for the last 20 minutes of the game. That was when they started thriving up against New Zealand, who, normally are susceptible to a kicking game. In fact, there's not many times New Zealand win a territory battle in a game of rugby, but it just seemed to be that almost it was, if South Africa hadn't made so many mistakes in regards to that kicking game, maybe it could have been really effective at Eden Park. But there was
we didn't deserve to win last week. I know people were quite upset with me, and I said, we didn't deserve to win. And then people, but we should have got a draw. And I said, no, we didn't even deserve to draw the game. Let's be honest. If one team dominates for 60 minutes and the other team dominates maybe or not even dominates, plays well for 20 minutes, you don't deserve to win the game. The way we started, I mean, at halftime, the writing was on the wall. We didn't deserve to win, so we didn't win. Fine. We can make it up this weekend. I hope we do. I'm looking forward to it. A lot of rugby on the channels. Your channel. You're going to be doing a hell of a lot of rugby this weekend.
Yeah, I think we've got the Rugby Championship, and then we've got New Zealand, South Africa for the Women's World Cup. Then sadly, the second World Cup quarterfinal overlaps with the Currie Cup semi-final. So I think I'll end up doing Boland versus the Lions.
Yeah.
Then from there, it will be Cheetahs versus Griquas, and then a bit of a sleep, and then 2 games of the women's quarterfinals, and then 3 games of the Pacific Nations Cup, all through Monday till about 2:30 p.m.
We got the same lineup as you. The Rugby Championship, then we'll do the women's South Africa, New Zealand, the 2 Currie Cup games. Vern will do the one on his own. And then I'm going to do Canada, Australia, because I think that's actually going to be the best game of the Women's Rugby World Cup this weekend. I think that's going to be the tightest one. And then on Sunday, of course, Samoa, USA in the morning. And then no rugby on Sunday because we're going to do, of course, Manchester United against Manchester City.
And you doing Scotland versus England on Sunday, says Big Rick. I will be.
You will, I won't.
Okay.
No. Look, I know it's a grudge match and everything, but I'm going 50, 60, 70 point difference here. I think the English are going to just hammer the crap out of the Scots. They're gonna chop them up like haggis, man. They're gonna finish them off.
It's gonna be interesting because so far we've seen a lot of one-sided games, and the last round was when we were supposed to see the slightly non-one-sided games. Do you know what I've just seen as I was about to get a link for your channel? Rugby.com.au are actually going to be streaming the Super Rugby AU on YouTube by the looks of it.
Okay.
That's a bit of a new one. So, yeah, anyone who wants to watch New South Wales Waratahs take on the Western Force, that game is kicking off in about 8 minutes' time. So be sure
I can check that out.
Check that one out.
There's only been 2 good rugby games, 2 good competitive rugby games at the Rugby World Cup. That was the Australia-USA one, and that was Italy against South Africa. They were the 2 best games.
Yep.
And everything else was very much predetermined who was going to win it.
Yeah, and even to a certain extent, these quarterfinals are too, aren't they? Like in that Canada-Australia game, I think Australia, they are still certainly the underdogs, but they're not expected to lose by as big of a margin. Yeah. I feel like unless France do something drastically wrong, then they should be able to beat the Irish, because 40-0 up against the Kiwis doesn't bode well heading into that next stage. But then you've also got, Scotland. When they play well, they can be handy, and I feel like they have to take a few notes from what we saw from the Australians in terms of getting right in the face of the English, and that was also down to a huge amount of mistakes we saw from the England side too, though. So I think that one will probably be second closest out of the games.
The New Zealand South Africa one is clear. The France Ireland one I think should be clear. England. The one I see being the closest is Canada, Australia.
Yeah.
And that all depends on how Australia start. But we'll see. But hey, thanks for having me on, man.
No, that's all good. But yeah, thank you all very much for also tuning in to this preview. Of course, the game taking place tomorrow, 7:05 p.m. New Zealand time or 9:05 a.m. for you guys in South Africa. We are going to be covering it on the channel, so be sure to check it out. But yeah, if you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and we will see you all for the next one.